Hello, everyone. How are you today? I hope you're all doing well. Today, I want to share something very special with you. It's about my trip to America. Yes, I traveled to the United States, and it was an amazing experience. I have so many things to tell you, and I think you will enjoy hearing all about it. Traveling to a new country is always exciting, and I was really looking forward to this adventure. Before I went on my trip, I felt a mix of emotions. I was happy and excited because I had always wanted to visit America. I had seen many pictures and videos of famous places in the U.S., and I couldn't wait to see them with my own eyes. But at the same time, I was also a little nervous. It was my first time traveling so far from home, and I didn't know what to expect. Would I like the food? Would I understand the people there? Would I find my way around? There were so many questions in my mind, but I knew this trip would be a great learning experience for me. The main reason for my trip was to explore and learn new things. I wanted to see famous places, meet new people, and improve my English. You know, learning a language is not just about studying from books or listening to lessons. Sometimes the best way to learn is by traveling and talking to native speakers. I wanted to practice my English in real-life situations, and I thought America was the perfect place to do that. I was also excited to try new food, experience different cultures, and see how people live in the U.S. Another reason for my trip was to have fun and relax. Life can be busy and stressful sometimes, and traveling is a great way to take a break. I wanted to enjoy myself, take beautiful pictures, and make wonderful memories. I also wanted to bring back interesting stories to share with my family and friends. And of course, I wanted to share my experiences with all of you. Besides learning and having fun, I also had another reason for visiting America. I wanted to meet some of my old friends who lived there. We had not seen each other for a long time, and this trip was a great chance to catch up and spend time together. We planned to visit some cool places, try delicious food, and have a lot of fun together. So, with all these exciting plans in my mind, I started preparing for my journey. I couldn't wait to experience everything I had dreamed about. The thought of walking through the streets of big cities, seeing tall buildings, and talking to people from different backgrounds made me very happy. It felt like a big adventure, and I was ready for it. In the next part of my story, I will tell you how I prepared for my trip. But for now, I hope you enjoyed hearing about why I decided to visit America. Have you ever thought about traveling to a new country? Where would you like to go? And what would you like to see? Traveling is a wonderful way to learn and grow, and I hope you all get a chance to explore new places one day. Preparing for my trip to America was a long and exciting process. There were so many things to do before I could finally get on the plane and fly to a new country. I had to make sure everything was ready, and I didn't forget anything important. Planning a trip is not always easy, but it is also a lot of fun because it makes you think about all the exciting things that are going to happen. Today, I want to tell you all about how I prepared for my trip, step by step. First, I had to pack my bags. This was not as simple as it sounds, because I needed to think carefully about what to take with me. America is a big country with different weather in different places, so I had to check the weather forecast for the city I was visiting. I looked online and saw that the weather would be warm during the day, but a little cold at night. So, I packed some light clothes, like t-shirts, shorts, and comfortable shoes for walking. But I also packed a jacket and a few sweaters for the colder evenings. Packing clothes is important, but that's not the only thing I needed to think about. I had to make sure I packed all the important documents for my trip. The most important thing, of course, was my passport. Without a passport, I couldn't even leave my country. I checked it several times to make sure it was valid and not expired. I also needed a visa to enter America, so I applied for it a few weeks before my trip and received it just in time. I put my passport and visa in a safe place in my travel bag because I knew I would need them at the airport. Another important document was my travel insurance. Travel insurance is very useful because if something bad happens, like losing my luggage or getting sick, I would be covered. I also printed my flight ticket and hotel booking confirmation just in case I needed to show them at the airport. To be extra careful, I kept copies of all my documents in my email and on my phone. That way, if I lost anything, I could still access it easily. Money was another thing I had to prepare. Since America uses dollars, I needed to exchange my money before I traveled. I went to the bank and exchanged my local currency for US dollars. I also decided to take my credit card with me because it's safer and easier to carry than cash. However, I made sure to have some cash with me for small purchases, like buying snacks or paying for transportation when I arrived. After packing my clothes and preparing my documents and money, it was time to buy my plane ticket. Buying a ticket is an exciting part of preparing for a trip because it makes everything feel real. I spent a lot of time looking at different airline websites to find the best price. I wanted a comfortable flight, but I also didn't want to spend too much money. Finally, I found a good deal on a direct flight to America. I booked my ticket online and received an email confirmation. It felt amazing to know that my journey was getting closer and closer. Once my ticket was booked and my bags were packed, I started thinking about how to say goodbye to my family and friends. Leaving home, even for a short time, can be a little emotional. I knew I would miss everyone, so I wanted to spend some time with them before I left. My family was very happy for me and proud that I was traveling to America. They gave me lots of advice and told me to be careful and take care of myself. My parents helped me check my luggage and made sure I had everything I needed. My friends were also very excited about my trip. We met up for coffee, and they asked me a lot of questions about what I planned to do in America. Some of them even gave me small gifts, like a travel notebook and a keychain, to remind me of home. Saying goodbye was not easy, but I promised to stay in touch with everyone. I told my family that I would call them and send pictures every day. I also made a video call plan with my friends, so we could talk even when I was far away. It felt good to know that even though I was going to a new place, I could still stay connected with the people I love. On the night before my flight, I checked my suitcase one last time to make sure I had everything. I made a checklist and ticked off each item: clothes, passport, visa, ticket, money, phone charger, and travel guidebook. Everything was ready. I went to bed early because I knew I needed to be well rested for the long journey ahead. I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness as I thought about all the adventures waiting for me in America. Finally, the day of my departure arrived. My family drove me to the airport, and I hugged everyone goodbye. I felt a little sad to leave, but I was also excited for the adventure ahead. As I walked into the airport, I took a deep breath and reminded myself that this trip was a dream come true. And that's how I prepared for my trip to America. Preparing for a journey takes time and effort, but it's also part of the fun. It helps you get ready for new experiences and makes you feel more confident. Have you ever prepared for a trip? What things do you think are important to take when traveling? I would love to hear your thoughts. Finally, the day of my trip arrived. I woke up early in the morning, feeling excited and a little nervous. My bags were packed, my documents were ready, and I was all set to go to the airport. My family and I got into the car and drove to the airport. On the way, I looked out of the window and thought about my journey ahead. I imagined myself walking through the streets of America, seeing famous places and meeting new people. The thought of it all made me smile. When we arrived at the airport, I was amazed by how big and busy it was. There were so many people, travelers with big suitcases, airport staff in uniforms, and families saying goodbye to their loved ones. The airport was full of noise, announcements on the speakers, the sound of luggage wheels rolling, and people talking in different languages. It felt exciting, but also a little overwhelming. The first thing I needed to do at the airport was check in my luggage. I looked for the airline counter where I could check in. Luckily, there were big signs everywhere to help passengers find their way. I walked up to the counter, and a friendly airline staff member greeted me with a smile. She asked for my passport and flight ticket. I handed them to her, and she checked my booking on her computer. Then she gave me my boarding pass, which had my seat number and flight details. Next, I placed my suitcase on the weighing scale. I was a little nervous because I wasn't sure if my luggage was too heavy. The airline has a weight limit, and if my suitcase was too heavy, I would have to pay extra money. Luckily, my luggage was the perfect weight, and I didn't have to worry. The airline staff put a tag on my suitcase and sent it down a conveyor belt. I watched it disappear, hoping I would see it again when I arrived in America. After checking in, I kept my carry-on bag with me. Inside, I had my passport, money, phone, and a few snacks for the flight. After checking in my luggage, it was time to go through security. This was an important step because airports take security very seriously. I followed the signs to the security checkpoint and saw a long line of people waiting to go through. I joined the line and slowly moved forward. When it was my turn, a security officer asked me to place my carry-on bag, jacket, and shoes in a plastic tray. I also had to take out my laptop and put it in a separate tray. Then, I walked through a metal detector. I was a little nervous because I didn't want it to beep. I took a deep breath and walked through slowly. Luckily, it didn't make any noise. The security officer smiled and told me I could collect my things. I picked up my bag and put on my shoes. I felt relieved that everything went smoothly. Security checks can feel stressful, but they are important to keep everyone safe. After passing through security, I finally arrived at the departure lounge. This was the waiting area before boarding the plane. I looked around and saw many shops, restaurants, and comfortable chairs for passengers to sit in. Since I had some time before my flight, I decided to explore a little. I walked through the duty-free shops, which sold all kinds of things: perfume, chocolate, souvenirs, and electronics. Everything looked so nice, but I didn't want to spend too much money before my trip even started. After walking around, I felt a little hungry, so I went to a cafe and bought a sandwich and a bottle of water. I sat down and ate while watching people around me. Some people were reading books, others were talking on the phone, and some were simply looking out of the large windows at the airplanes. I could see planes taking off and landing, and it was such an exciting sight. I imagined myself on one of those planes, flying high above the clouds. As I waited for my flight, I checked my phone and texted my family and friends. I told them I was at the airport and everything was going well. They wished me a safe journey and reminded me to take care of myself. It felt nice to stay connected with them, even though I was about to travel far away. Soon, I heard an announcement on the speakers. Passengers traveling to America, please proceed to gate number 25. That was my flight. I quickly gathered my things and walked to the gate. There were many other passengers waiting there, and I could feel the excitement in the air. Everyone was ready to start their journey. At the boarding gate, the airline staff checked my boarding pass and passport one more time. After that, I walked down the long corridor that led to the airplane. My heart was beating fast because I knew I was just moments away from beginning my adventure. Stepping onto the plane felt like the beginning of a dream. The flight attendants welcomed me with a smile, and I found my seat near the window. I placed my carry-on bag in the overhead compartment and sat down. I looked out the window and saw the airport staff loading luggage onto the plane. Soon, the pilot made an announcement, welcoming everyone on board and giving us details about the flight. As I sat there waiting for takeoff, I thought about everything I had done to prepare for this trip, from packing my bags to going through security, and now finally sitting on the plane. It was an exciting experience, and I couldn't wait to see what adventures were waiting for me in America. And that's how my experience at the airport went. Airports can be busy and sometimes stressful, but they are also full of excitement and new opportunities. Have you ever been to an airport? What was your experience like? Let me know. Finally, it was time for my flight to America. As I stepped onto the airplane, I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. It was my first time taking such a long journey, and I didn't know exactly what to expect. The flight attendants greeted me with warm smiles and guided me to my seat. I had chosen a window seat because I wanted to enjoy the view during the flight. I walked down the narrow aisle, looking for my seat number. When I found it, I placed my carry-on bag in the overhead compartment and sat down. The seat was comfortable, with a soft cushion and a small pillow placed neatly on it. In front of me, there was a small screen for watching movies and a foldable tray table for meals. I also noticed a pocket with magazines, a safety instruction card, and a small paper bag in case anyone felt sick during the flight. I put on my seatbelt and looked around the plane. The cabin was full of people. Some were talking to their travel companions. Others were already reading books or using their phones. The sound of passengers settling in and the flight attendants making preparations filled the air. Soon the captain's voice came through the speakers, welcoming everyone on board. He explained the flight details, including the travel time and expected weather conditions. The flight attendants then demonstrated the safety procedures. They showed us how to fasten our seat belts, where to find life jackets, and how to use the oxygen masks in case of emergency. I watched carefully, even though I hoped I would never have to use any of it. After a few minutes, the plane slowly began to move towards the runway. I felt my heart beating faster as I looked out the window and saw other planes taking off and landing. Suddenly, the plane accelerated, and I was pushed back into my seat. The engines roared loudly as we lifted off the ground. I looked outside and saw the airport getting smaller and smaller until it disappeared beneath the clouds. It was such an amazing feeling. Once we reached a high altitude, the plane leveled off, and the flight attendants announced that we could now remove our seatbelts if we wanted to move around. I stayed in my seat, enjoying the beautiful view outside the window. The sky was a bright blue, and the clouds looked like soft white cotton. It felt like I was floating above the world, and I couldn't stop staring. After some time, the flight attendants started serving food. I was curious about what airplane food would taste like. They came down the aisle with their carts and asked me if I wanted chicken or pasta. I chose chicken, and they placed a small tray in front of me. The tray had a main dish with chicken, rice, and vegetables, a small salad, a bread roll with butter, and a dessert. There was also a cup of juice and a bottle of water. I opened the foil covering my meal and took my first bite. To my surprise, it tasted quite good. The chicken was tender, and the rice was soft. The salad was fresh, and the bread was warm. Eating on an airplane was a unique experience. The tray was small, and I had to be careful not to spill anything. I enjoyed my meal while watching a movie on the screen in front of me. The flight attendants were very kind, coming around to offer tea and coffee after the meal. I decided to have a cup of tea to help me relax. After eating, I leaned back in my seat and looked out the window again. The view was breathtaking. I could see the vast ocean below, with small islands scattered here and there. At one point, I even saw another airplane flying far away in the distance. Watching the world from above made me feel so small, yet so connected to everything. I thought about how incredible it was to travel across the world in just a few hours. As the flight continued, I decided to explore the in-flight entertainment system. There were many movies, TV shows, music albums, and even games to play. I watched a comedy movie to pass the time, and I could hear people around me laughing at their screens as well. Some passengers were reading books, while others were taking naps with blankets covering them. After a few hours, I felt a little tired. I adjusted my seat, put on my travel pillow, and closed my eyes. The gentle hum of the engines and the slight movement of the plane made it easy to fall asleep. When I woke up, I checked the flight map on my screen to see where we were. We were flying over a large country, and it was interesting to see how far we had traveled. Halfway through the flight attendants served another meal. This time it was a light snack with a sandwich, fruit, and a drink. It was a nice break, and I enjoyed chatting with the person sitting next to me. He was also traveling to America for the first time, and we talked about our travel plans and what we were most excited to see. It felt nice to share my excitement with someone else who understood. As we got closer to America, the captain made another announcement, telling us we would soon begin our descent. I looked out the window and saw the beautiful coastline coming into view. The sun was starting to set, and the sky was painted with shades of orange and pink. It was a breathtaking sight, and I felt grateful for the opportunity to experience it. The flight attendants came around one last time to collect any trash and make sure everyone was ready for landing. I fastened my seat belt and held onto the armrest as the plane slowly descended. I could feel the excitement building up inside me as I saw the city lights getting closer and closer. Finally, the plane touched down on the runway with a gentle bump. Everyone clapped, happy to have arrived safely. I smiled and took a deep breath. I had made it to America. The long flight was over, and a new adventure was about to begin. Flying on an airplane for such a long journey was an unforgettable experience. I learned how to stay comfortable during a flight, how to enjoy airplane food, and how to appreciate the beautiful views from above. Have you ever been on an airplane? What did you like the most about your flight? Let me know. After many hours in the air, the captain finally announced that we were beginning our descent into America. I couldn't believe it. I was almost there. I looked out the window and saw the city lights glowing in the distance. The view was breathtaking. The tall buildings, highways, and tiny houses below looked so different from my home. I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness as the plane slowly descended. The engines roared as we got closer to the ground, and I held onto my seat, waiting for the moment we would finally land. When the plane touched down with a slight bump, I heard a collective sigh of relief from the passengers. Some people even clapped, happy to have arrived safely. I smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment. I had traveled such a long way, and now I was in America. As the plane taxied to the gate, I could see airport workers guiding it to the right position. Outside, I saw other airplanes parked at their gates and airport vehicles moving around quickly. It was a busy and exciting scene. After a few minutes, the seatbelt sign turned off, and everyone stood up to collect their bags. I waited patiently, knowing that it would take some time for everyone to get off the plane. I reached for my carry-on bag in the overhead compartment and made sure I had all my important things: my passport, phone, and travel documents. As I walked down the aisle towards the exit, a flight attendant smiled and said, "Welcome to America." I thanked her and stepped out of the plane onto the jet bridge. The first thing I noticed when I entered the airport was how big it was. The terminal was bright and modern, with signs everywhere guiding passengers to different areas. There were people from all over the world, speaking different languages, carrying suitcases, and looking excited to start their journeys. I followed the crowd towards immigration, where I would have to go through passport control. I had heard stories about immigration checks being long and sometimes stressful, so I was a little nervous. The immigration hall was huge, with many lines for different types of travelers: citizens, visitors, and special lines for families. I joined the line for visitors and waited patiently. The line moved slowly, but I used the time to look around and observe everything. Large digital screens displayed flight information, and airport staff were walking around helping passengers. When it was finally my turn, I walked up to the immigration officer. He was wearing a uniform and looked very serious. He asked me for my passport, and I handed it to him with a polite smile. He looked at it carefully, checking my visa and travel details. Then he asked me a few questions. "What is the purpose of your visit?" he asked. "I'm here for vacation," I replied confidently. "How long will you stay in America?" he continued. "I plan to stay for 2 weeks," I answered. "Where will you be staying?" "I have booked a hotel in the city," I replied, showing him my booking confirmation. The officer nodded and stamped my passport. "Enjoy your stay," he said, handing it back to me. I felt so relieved. I had passed immigration, and now I was officially in America. After immigration, I walked to the baggage claim area to collect my suitcase. There were many luggage belts, each one labeled with different flight numbers. I checked the screen and found my flight number. I stood by the conveyor belt, watching as bags slowly rolled out. I hoped my suitcase would arrive safely. After a few minutes, I saw my black suitcase with the red ribbon I had tied on it to recognize it easily. I quickly grabbed it and checked to make sure everything was fine. Before leaving the airport, I had to go through customs. The officers were checking to make sure people were not bringing anything illegal into the country. I didn't have anything to declare, so I walked through the green lane, which was for passengers with nothing to declare. The officers smiled and let me pass without any issues. Now that I was finally outside the restricted area, I took a deep breath and looked around. The airport arrivals hall was crowded with people holding signs, waiting for their loved ones. Some were hugging and laughing, happy to see each other again. I felt a little lonely for a moment, but then I reminded myself that this was a new adventure, and I was ready for it. My next task was to find a way to get to my hotel. I had 2 choices: take a taxi or use public transportation. Since I had heavy luggage and wasn't familiar with the city, I decided to take a taxi. I followed the signs to the taxi stand outside the airport. The air was cool and fresh, and I could see many yellow taxis lined up, waiting for passengers. A friendly driver approached me and asked where I wanted to go. I showed him the name of my hotel, and he helped me put my suitcase in the trunk. I got into the taxi, feeling excited to finally see the city. The driver started the car and began driving through the busy streets. I looked out of the window and saw tall skyscrapers, colorful billboards, and people walking quickly on the sidewalks. Everything felt so new and exciting. As we drove, the driver started chatting with me. "Is this your first time in America?" he asked. "Yes, it is," I replied with a smile. "You'll love it here. There's so much to see and do," he said. He told me about some famous landmarks I should visit and recommended a few local restaurants to try. It felt nice to have someone give me friendly advice. The taxi ride took about 30 minutes, and finally, we arrived at my hotel. It was a tall, modern building with bright lights and a welcoming entrance. The driver helped me with my luggage, and I thanked him, paying the fare and giving him a small tip for his kindness. As I walked into the hotel lobby, I felt a sense of relief and happiness. I had finally arrived, and now my adventure could truly begin. The receptionist at the front desk welcomed me and checked me into my room. I took the elevator to my floor and opened the door to my hotel room. It was cozy and comfortable, with a big bed, a TV, and a window that showed a beautiful view of the city. I sat on the bed for a moment, feeling grateful that everything had gone smoothly. I had successfully landed, passed immigration, found a taxi, and reached my hotel safely.